Good morning, dear students. This is Somjit, and today we are going to talk about marketing research, which is chapter 7. So, to start off, what is the concept of marketing research? Why do we need marketing research? Well, I'm sure you have done some kind of research in any of the projects that you have done so far as part of being in the program, and different projects require different levels of research, but the whole point of research is that you are trying to find the answer to a question. So that is that is what research is at a very basic level. So when it comes to marketing research, any kind of answers that you are trying to find a solution for a marketing problem, that is what marketing research is. So to give you a very simple example, why am I not having enough number of customers? Okay, that's a very common question, a very common problem for many of the companies. If you want to find an answer to this question, you have to conduct marketing research. Why? Because the problem is a marketing problem. So that is what the first objective is, right? The reason for conducting marketing research. In other words, you are trying to do your best. You are trying to make sure that you are providing value to your shareholders. And when you run a business, there will always be problems, no matter how successful you are. So marketing research is an ongoing process. You cannot just do it at one point of time and solve the question, find the answer to it, and relax on the beach. Okay, I'm done, and so I'm going to spend the rest of my life making good money. It simply doesn't work that way. There will be continuous problems as you run your business. So marketing research is a continuous process. The second objective is the 5-step marketing research approach that leads to marketing actions. Well, you really don't need to memorize this. I mean, anything in marketing is not rocket science. Everything is intuitive. So you need to understand what it talks about. So I think that will really, you won't really require, you won't be required to memorize any of these steps. So at a very basic level, if you think about it, what is the question that I'm trying to find out? What is the question that I'm trying to answer? So that should be the very basic step in terms of your marketing research. If you do not know what is it that you're trying to find out, I think you are on the wrong foot. You have started on the wrong foot, so which is really not what you want. And many of the well-known companies even make wrong decisions. I mean, think about Circuit City, which was one of the number 2 US retailer in electronics, and that company went under. What is the reason? It simply took some wrong decisions. So it is very critical that you understand that you understand or you identify what problem you're trying to solve. So that's typically the first step. Once you know that, then the next step is to collect the data, because to conduct marketing research, you need to collect the data. Data tells you a lot of things. What are the trends, what are the future projections, where are the problems. If you don't look at the data, if you don't look at past data, I don't think you will be able to successfully conduct marketing research. So the third step is to, once you collect the data, the third step is to analyze the data, which means what is the data telling you? You need to be able to talk to your data, right? You need to be able to analyze it using statistical tools, some of which the textbook talks about. Once you analyze the data, then you need to look at the results. Okay, so I am not getting enough, my sales are declining, I do not have enough customers. So okay, has this trend been going on for the last 5 years, or has it been going on for the last 1 year? If it has been going on for the last 5 years, that means there is some serious problem. It has been a long-standing problem. If it has been going on only for the last 6 months, then it's a relatively new problem. So maybe it is a little bit easier to resolve. So these are the kinds of questions that we are talking about. So that is what data tells you. That is what analysis of the data and the results of that analysis are going to tell you. The next step is to be able to present your findings to your executive board, to the shareholders and to your stakeholders and people who run the company, people who make the major decisions. So that you should be able to do in a professional manner and in a concise manner. It should not be too short. At the same time, it should not be too much descriptive, because remember, company executives simply do not have the time to go into so much details. They really want to know the nuts and bolts. Okay, what are the major trends? What are some of the major factors that you need to be aware of? So that is what we are talking about. All right, the next learning objective is how marketing uses secondary and primary data. Well, first, obviously, you have to know what primary and what secondary data is. And as many of you might already be aware of, primary data is data that you collect yourself fresh for the purposes specifically of this research. In other words, primary data is data that you collect yourself. It does not exist. Secondary data, on the other hand, is data that already exists somewhere, which was collected by somebody else, maybe for similar purposes or for different purposes. So all you do is you are collecting that, you are using that data, not collecting, you are using that data for purposes of your own research or for giving you ideas about your own research. So the main difference between primary and secondary is that primary is fresh, it is collected by you, it is current. Secondary data, on the other hand, it was collected by somebody else, maybe for something similar or something totally different. So the obvious question that you might have is, okay, which one should I go for? Well, I would strongly encourage you to consult the textbook for this, because each of them has their own advantages and disadvantages. For example, one advantage of primary data is that it is fresh, it is current, and it is data that you are collecting for your own purpose. So you know what is going on and you are well aware of what are some of the weaknesses of the data, what are some of the errors that may be possible. Secondary data, on the other hand, it may not be current and it may have been collected for totally different reasons, so it may not be appropriate for what you're looking for. The most obvious problem with secondary data is that there may be errors in the data, and there will be, that you may be completely unaware of. So that is the biggest problem. So you might be looking for something else and the data might be telling you of something totally different. So those are the biggest pitfalls of secondary data. On the other hand, secondary data has its advantages too. For example, it is readily available, so all you have to do is just collect it. Sometimes you have to pay a price for it, but nonetheless it is readily available and you don't have to go through all these steps of collecting primary data. So again, it's a case-by-case basis. You have to look at the pros and cons of each of them. That is how you decide whether you do primary data or secondary data. The next learning objective is the uses of observations, questionnaires, panels, etc. for collection methods. So as you are aware of, there are different ways you can collect data. When you're doing primary research or whether you are doing secondary research. For secondary research, you can use websites, you can use repositories, you can use many of the bigger companies, they will have their own internal repository of information which you can use. For primary data, you can use different methods. For example, surveys. For surveys, you can use face-to-face method, you can use mall intercept, you can use telephone survey. You can also use, for internet surveys, you can use a questionnaire, or also a lot of the times you use a panel. A panel is a group of people who have similar interests that you have gathered for the purposes specifically of the survey, and it's at a secure location under controlled environment. So you ask them a series of questions or subject them to a series of external stimuli, and then you record their observations and their feedback. So that is what a panel is. So again, there are different ways of collecting data. Some of them are expensive, some of them are more time consuming, others are more cheaper. For example, face-to-face survey, ideally that is the best way to collect data because you're talking directly to the person, but at the same time it is more time consuming and it is more expensive. So you will have to look at the pros and cons of each of these methods. when you're looking at the different options that are available to you in terms of collecting data. The fifth learning objective is explaining how information technology and data mining lead to marketing actions. Well, information technology, we know, when you're using the internet to collect data or through surveys, and right now, for example, social media is a big thing. A lot of companies, they use social media a lot to collect customer feedback, to collect customer information, what are some of the latest trends, so on and so forth. So those are some things, some of the uses of information technology and how you can use them smartly. I think using information technology is not a big challenge per se, but how you use it and how you use the data collected from information technology, I think that is one of the biggest challenges, because one of the things that we see here is information overload. Getting information using the internet is easy. I mean, it is there everywhere, all the time. Anybody can access it. The problem is you need to know what is it that you're looking for, number one. Number two, once you know what is it that you're looking for, how you are going to use that information that you collect effectively, efficiently, and smartly. If you do not have the tools, you won't be able to, that information is useless to you. Unfortunately, a lot of the managers do not have the tools that they can analyze the information. So in this chapter, we are not going to go too much into depth about some of the tools that we use, but we need to be aware of, at a very basic level, how you can use that information. So I think that is what is important. So again, I would like to emphasize two things. Number one, how you can use information technology, and number two, it is important to know what information is appropriate. Okay, so that is what I would like you to focus on. The sixth learning objective is the 3 approaches to developing a company's sales forecast. So there are different strategies. Again, these 3 approaches, they are based on what is it that you're looking for. If you're looking for, how you can increase your sales, or what your sales are going to be 3 years down the road or 5 years down the road, then you take one approach. Another approach might be based on how you want to be competitive in the market, right? Whether you want to be the number 1 or whether you want to be the number 2, that will also depend on how many competitors you have, so on and so forth. So that is what I would like you to focus on. For marketing research, it is important to have a goal. It is important to have a vision, an objective. What is it that you're trying to achieve, and where do you want to see yourself, in the long run, in the long term? That is pretty much going to dictate, or that is what is pretty much going to help you decide what kind of resources you want, what kind of information you want, how you are going to collect your data, when you are going to collect your data, at what frequency, what is going to be your sample size, how big the sample, from where you are going to collect the data, what kind of tools you are going to use, how you are going to analyze the data, what kind of results you are looking for, how you are going to present your result, and equally important is how you are going to execute your plans. I mean, you do all this work and you come up with a plan, you come up with some kind of recommendation, but if you cannot execute, if you cannot implement the recommendations, then all the effort is gone down the drain, right? So that is also what you will have to be aware of. So that's all for chapter 7. I will be back in chapter 8. All right, have a great day. Thank you.